Have you ever noticed something strange happening at work? The employee who used to stay late every night suddenly leaves exactly at 5. The coworker who once volunteered for every extra project now quietly says, "That's outside my responsibilities." The person who always answered emails at midnight has completely disappeared after business hours. They're still showing up. They're still doing their jobs. They're still collecting a paycheck. But mentally, they're already gone. Some people call it laziness. Others call it entitlement. But what if they're actually responding to a system that stopped rewarding loyalty a long time ago? What if quiet quitting isn't about quitting your job at all, but about refusing to let your job consume your life? Today, we're going to uncover why millions of employees have quietly changed the way they work, why companies hate this trend, why workers embrace it, and whether quiet quitting is actually protecting your future or silently destroying your career. Because before you decide whether to give 110%, you should understand what that extra 10% has really been buying people. Welcome back to Wealth with Bob. For decades, Americans were told a simple formula: work harder than everyone else, stay loyal to your company, and eventually you'll be rewarded. Many people believed it. They worked weekends, skipped vacations, answered emails during family dinners, sacrificed birthdays, relationships, and their health because they believed dedication would eventually pay off. Sometimes it did, but for millions of others, the reward wasn't a promotion. It wasn't a raise. It wasn't appreciation. It was another round of layoffs, another restructuring, another reminder that even your best years at a company don't guarantee security. That's when something changed. People didn't necessarily quit their job. They simply stopped giving away parts of their lives for free. And that's where quiet quitting began. Before we dive in, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like your company expected more from you than it was willing to give back? Leave a comment below with yes or no. I'm curious to see how many people have experienced this firsthand. Now let's talk about what quiet quitting really means, because chances are you've been hearing the wrong definition all along. Number 1, quiet quitting isn't what most people think. The phrase quiet quitting spread across social media almost overnight, and almost immediately, people started misunderstanding it. Many assumed it meant employees had become lazy, that they no longer cared, that they wanted to get paid without doing any work. But that's not what quiet quitting is. A quiet quitter still shows up every day. They still complete the tasks they're hired to do. They still meet deadlines, attend meetings, and fulfill the responsibilities outlined in their job description. The difference is what they stop doing. They stop volunteering for unpaid work. They stop answering emails at 10 o'clock at night. They stop feeling guilty for taking their vacation days. They stop treating every request as an emergency. And perhaps most importantly, they stop believing that saying yes to everything automatically leads to career success. Some managers see this as a lack of commitment, but many employees see it differently. They believe they're simply honoring the agreement they made when they accepted the job. The company pays them for a specific role. They perform that role. Nothing more, nothing less. Think about almost any other business transaction. If you hire someone to paint your house, you wouldn't expect them to also mow your lawn, fix your roof, and clean your garage for the same price. Yet in many workplaces, employees slowly become responsible for more and more tasks without additional compensation. One project turns into 3. One person's workload quietly becomes the workload of 2. Meetings begin earlier. Messages arrive later. Weekends slowly disappear. And because these changes happen gradually, people often don't notice how much they're giving away until they're completely exhausted. That's when quiet quitting becomes less about doing less work and more about reclaiming personal boundaries. It's not saying, "I refuse to work." It's saying, "I refuse to let work become my entire identity." There's a huge difference. Now, that doesn't mean quiet quitting is always the right decision. Some people use boundaries wisely. Others use the label as an excuse to stop growing altogether. And that's an important distinction. Healthy boundaries protect your energy. Permanent disengagement limits your opportunities. The smartest professionals understand where that line exists. They continue producing excellent work during working out, but they also recognize that being available 24 hours a day isn't a requirement for being valuable. Because being a great employee should never require sacrificing your health, your family, or your peace of mind. So let me ask you this. Do you believe employees should only do what's written in their job description? Or should going above and beyond always be expected? Leave your answer in the comments below. I'd genuinely like to hear both sides of the argument. Number 2. Why good employees suddenly stop caring. Here's something that often surprises managers. Most quiet quitters didn't start out as disengaged employees. In fact, many of them were the exact opposite. They were the first to arrive, the last to leave, the ones everyone relied on when deadlines became impossible. If a coworker called in sick, they covered the shift. If a client needed help after hours, they answered the phone. If the team was overwhelmed, they stepped in without being asked. These weren't bad employees. They were often the best employees. So what changed? The answer usually isn't laziness. It's disappointment. Many people enter the workforce believing that hard work naturally leads to recognition. Work harder. Be more dependable. Take on extra responsibility. Eventually, someone will notice. Sometimes that happens, but many times it doesn't. Instead, exceptional performance quietly becomes the new expectation. The employee who always says yes keeps getting more work. The employee who never complains receives even greater responsibility. And because they've proven they can handle it, managers often assume they don't mind carrying the extra load. What was once appreciated gradually becomes expected. The promotion never comes. The raise barely covers inflation. The thank you becomes a quick email instead of meaningful career growth. After enough years, people begin asking themselves a difficult question. If giving everything hasn't changed my life, why do I keep giving everything? That's often the moment burnout begins. Burnout doesn't usually happen because someone worked hard for one busy week. It happens after months or even years of constantly running on empty. Imagine surviving multiple rounds of layoffs. Your company eliminates positions to reduce costs, but the work doesn't disappear. It simply gets redistributed. Now, 3 people's responsibilities belong to 2, sometimes even 1. At first, employees tell themselves it's temporary. We're just getting through a tough quarter. We'll hire replacements soon. We just need to push a little harder. But weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. The temporary workload quietly becomes the permanent standard. Eventually, people stop asking for help. They stop volunteering. They stop raising their hand. Not because they no longer care, but because they're emotionally exhausted. Quiet quitting becomes less of a protest and more of a survival strategy. It's the mind's way of saying, I can't keep living like this. Of course. There's another side to this conversation. Some employees become disengaged long before they've actually been treated unfairly. Some stop putting in effort the moment work becomes challenging. That's not burnout. That's avoidance. The healthiest mindset lies somewhere in the middle. Work hard. Take pride in your performance. Be willing to grow. But never confuse self-sacrifice with career success. A great career should improve your life, not slowly consume it. The employees who last 20 or 30 years aren't always the ones who work the longest hours. They're often the ones who learn how to protect their energy while continuing to deliver meaningful results. That's a lesson every professional eventually has to learn, one way or another. Number 3. The loyalty trap nobody warned you about. For generations, loyalty was considered one of the most valuable qualities an employee could have. Stay with one company, work hard, keep your head down, be patient. Eventually, your loyalty would be rewarded with promotions, raises, and long-term job security. For a while, that promise felt real. Many people built entire careers around it. But over the past few decades, something quietly changed. Companies became faster. Markets became more competitive. Technology transformed entire industries almost overnight. Businesses that once promised lifelong careers began focusing on quarterly earnings, shareholder expectations, and organizational efficiency. None of that automatically makes companies evil. Businesses exist to make a profit. That's their responsibility. The difficult reality is that when financial pressure increases, loyalty often becomes less valuable than flexibility. A company may genuinely appreciate an employee who's been there for 15 years. But if cutting costs becomes necessary, appreciation doesn't always protect that employee's position. That's the moment many workers begin questioning everything they believed about loyalty. They remember the coworker who missed family vacations to finish projects, the manager who answered emails during every holiday, the employee who gave 20 years to the company only to be laid off during a restructuring that lasted less than 5 minutes. Watching stories like these changes people, especially younger employees. Many millennials and members of Generation Z grew up watching their parents dedicate decades to one employer, only to discover that loyalty wasn't always returned. That experience shaped an entirely different attitude toward work. Instead of asking, "How can I prove my loyalty?" they ask, "Is this company earning my loyalty?" That's a completely different question. Today's workforce is more likely to believe that employment is a professional agreement, not a lifelong relationship. If both sides benefit, the partnership continues. If one side consistently sacrifices while the other continues taking, people eventually begin protecting themselves. And can you really blame them? Here's another uncomfortable truth. In many industries, employees who change companies every few years often earn significantly more than those who stay in the same position for a decade. Why? Because companies frequently offer higher salaries to attract new talent than they do to retain existing employees. It's one of the biggest ironies in today's job market. The person who stays loyal may receive a 3% annual raise. The person who leaves for a competitor may receive a 20% increase overnight. When employees notice patterns like this, loyalty starts feeling less like a virtue and more like an expensive financial decision. Now, does that mean you should constantly jump from one company to another? Not necessarily. Long-term careers still offer incredible opportunities when you're learning, growing, and being fairly rewarded. But blind loyalty without honest evaluation can become dangerous. Loyalty should never mean ignoring your own value. It should never require accepting years of stagnation out of fear or guilt. The healthiest professionals stay because they choose to, not because they feel trapped. They continue investing in relationships. They continue producing great work, but they also keep developing new skills, expanding their network, and understanding their value in the marketplace. Because real career security doesn't come from staying at one company forever. It comes from becoming so valuable that you'll always have options. And sometimes, knowing you have options is the greatest form of job security you'll ever have. Before we move on, I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you believe employee loyalty is still rewarded in today's workplace? Or do you think those days are mostly over? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm interested to see where everyone stands on this. Number 4. Companies optimize profit. Employees protect their lives. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that companies and employees are playing different games. They're not. They're simply playing by different rules. A business exists to create value, generate profit, and remain competitive. If costs rise, leaders look for ways to reduce expenses. If demand falls, budgets shrink. If investors expect stronger returns, companies search for greater efficiency. That's not personal, it's business. At the same time, employees have their own responsibility to earn a living, to provide for their families, to protect their physical and mental health, to build a life that exists outside the office. That's not selfish. That's life. The problem begins when one side expects unlimited sacrifice from the other. Imagine this. A company asks employees to work longer hours during a busy season. Most people understand that. Sometimes extra effort is necessary. But then the busy season never ends. The late nights become normal. Weekend emails become expected. Vacations become difficult to take. Suddenly, going the extra mile becomes the minimum requirement. That is where resentment begins to grow, because extra effort is meaningful only when it remains extra. If extraordinary performance becomes the everyday expectation, people eventually stop feeling appreciated. They start feeling exploited. And once that feeling takes hold, motivation begins to disappear. This is exactly why so many people embrace quiet quitting. Not because they hate working, not because they lack ambition, but because they're trying to restore balance. They're reminding themselves that a paycheck is part of life, not the purpose of life. Here's something worth remembering. Companies don't usually ask, "How much energy does this employee have left?" They ask, "Can this work still get done?" Employees, on the other hand, Eventually start asking a different question. Is this job worth what it's costing me? Not financially, emotionally, physically, mentally. When those costs become too high, people naturally begin protecting themselves. Some leave. Some negotiate better boundaries. Others quietly stop giving more than they're being paid to give. None of those choices automatically make someone right or wrong. They're simply different responses to the same pressure. But here's the important part. Protecting your personal life should never become an excuse for lowering your professional standards. There's a difference between setting boundaries and becoming careless. You can leave work on time while still producing exceptional results. You can decline unnecessary overtime while remaining reliable. You can protect your evenings without developing a reputation for doing the bare minimum. In fact, the most respected professionals often master exactly that balance. They're dependable, they're productive, they're easy to work with, but they also understand that saying yes to everything eventually means saying no to something else. Maybe it's dinner with your family. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your sleep. Maybe it's your future. Every yes has a hidden cost. The question isn't whether you should work hard. You absolutely should. The real question is whether your hard work is building the life you actually want or slowly taking it away. Because success isn't measured only by what you achieve at work. It's also measured by what you're able to keep outside of it. Number 5. Is quiet quitting smart or career suicide? So, is quiet quitting the right move? The honest answer is, it depends. Like most career decisions, there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. For some people, quiet quitting is exactly what they need. If you've been working 60-hour weeks for years, if you're emotionally exhausted, if you've sacrificed your health, your relationships, and your happiness for a company that barely notices, then setting healthier boundaries may be one of the smartest decisions you'll ever make. No promotion is worth chronic stress. No paycheck is worth destroying your physical or mental health. Sometimes, doing less isn't giving up. It's recovering. But there's another side of the story that people rarely talk about. Some employees hear the phrase quiet quitting and interpret it as permission to stop caring completely. They stop improving. They avoid responsibility. They do the absolute minimum every single day. Then they're surprised when promotions stop coming. When opportunities disappear, when their careers become stagnant, here's the reality. Companies notice effort. They also notice attitude. And while no employer should expect unlimited sacrifice, most leaders naturally invest more in people who consistently create value. That's simply how organizations work. The goal shouldn't be to become invisible. The goal should be to become intentional. Instead of asking, how little can I do? Ask yourself, where does my effort actually create value? Focus on the projects that build your skills. Take on work that increases your experience. Volunteer when the opportunity genuinely benefits your long-term career, not because you feel guilty saying no. Work with purpose, not out of obligation. The smartest professionals don't give away their time for free, but they also don't stop investing in themselves. They understand something many people miss. Every assignment teaches something. Every challenge develops a skill. Every difficult conversation builds confidence. Sometimes the biggest reward isn't today's paycheck. It's becoming the kind of professional who can earn far more tomorrow. That's why career growth requires balance. Protect your boundaries, but don't stop growing. Protect your personal life, but don't lose your professional reputation. Protect your peace, but don't lose your ambition. Because your goal isn't simply to survive your current job. It's to create enough skills, experience, and financial freedom that one day you'll have the power to choose the work you truly want. That's real freedom, not working less, but having more choices. Before we wrap up, I want to hear your opinion. Do you think quiet quitting is a healthy way to protect yourself? Or do you believe it hurts long-term career growth? There's no right or wrong answer here. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm looking forward to reading your perspective. Quiet quitting isn't really about quitting. It's about asking a question that millions of people never thought to ask before. What is my life actually worth? For decades, many of us believed success meant sacrificing everything for our careers. Work a little longer, give a little more, be a little more available. Eventually, it will all pay off. Sometimes it does, but sometimes the biggest promotion you ever receive is realizing that your life can't be measured only by your job title or your paycheck. A successful career is important. Financial security matters. Professional growth matters, but so do your health, your family, your friendships, your peace of mind, and the moments you'll never get back. The truth is, companies will continue making business decisions, and employees will continue making life decisions. Neither side is completely right. Neither side is completely wrong. The healthiest careers are built when both understand that work is a partnership, not a one-sided sacrifice. So if you're feeling burned out, don't automatically assume the answer is to quit. Maybe you need stronger boundaries. Maybe you need a difficult conversation with your manager. Maybe you need to develop new skills and find a better opportunity. Or maybe you've simply forgotten that your career is supposed to support your life, not replace it. At the end of the day, your goal shouldn't be to become someone who quietly quits. Your goal should be to become someone who never feels trapped in the first place. Build your skills, increase your value, protect your health, create options. Because the people with the most freedom aren't the ones who never work hard. They're the ones who always have a choice. If you enjoyed this discussion, make sure to subscribe to Wealth with Bob for more practical career advice, workplace strategies, and financial insights that help you make smarter decisions not just at work, but in life. And before you go, answer one final question in the comments. If your company doubled your salary tomorrow, would you still want to work there? Just answer yes or no, and if you want, tell us why. Some of the most interesting conversations always happen in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.